Okay. Hello, 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 Nicole. Welcome to the Remember to Live podcast.
Orion, thank you so much for having me. So happy to be here.
So excited to have you on the podcast. I know we've met each other in person a few times. We've been in the same communities online, and I'm just very inspired by your journey in your life, and I can't wait to get into it today.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
So, I love to start the podcast with the question of what does it mean to live a life and live a life well to you?
So for me, I think living well is about chasing joy, right? My whole philosophy, no matter what's happening in my life or in my business, I'm like, how can I be joyful in this moment? And of course, I'm not going to be like, it's not toxic positivity. I don't think, I think it's more like, what can I find in this moment to be joyful about, to be grateful for, to be happy about, right? I
Yeah.
focus on that because Lord knows there's so much to be, unhappy about. There's so much going on in the world, sometimes even in our own families, communities. And so that to me is, chasing joy is one of the things that I do on a daily basis.
Oh, and I know we're kind of programmed to chase everything else, right? Like chase titles, chase money, chase whatever society is telling us success looks like. And so many times like we forget about the joy or we don't find the joy or we think joy is meant for like something in the future. Like one day we'll earn our joy. So I love that you love to define living a well life by like finding the joy right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd love to have you start by sharing a little bit about your background in your childhood because I know that there's a lot you can learn when you've been exposed to different cultures. And I know that you grew up in a culture that may not be what a lot of people have been exposed to. So to hear a little bit about kind of how that started and how your journey kicked off would be amazing.
Yeah. I live in the United States now. I've been here over 27 years. But I literally grew up in a deep rural community in Jamaica, the island of Jamaica. And it was very different from now. And I always think about how when you're little and you see like the bright lights or you hear about the bright lights because we didn't have any TV then, right? So you hear about the bright lights and you hear about the things that are happening in the city. You're like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to go to the city, right? And so I grew up in the country where it was the ultimate farm to table, right?
Mm,
We literally grew what we ate. And recently I was talking to my husband and I'm like, because he grew up in the city, so he's not like a country boy, right?
yeah.
So he recently went to Jamaica and he went to another area, but it's more rural, right? And he was fascinated. And he's like, "Oh, there's a breadfruit tree here, and breadfruit is kind of like I don't know if you know breadfruit, but it looks like jackfruit,
Okay.
but you have to roast it, and it's like a carb, it's like a yam, right?"
Ah, yeah.
And so he's like, "Oh, we have breadfruit trees, and we have cane, sugar cane," and I'm like, "Dude, that is what I grew up like. That's literally my life, right?" And so we had all kinds of fruit trees and all kinds of, we planted our own food. And so now that I'm in the city, I'm like, oh my gosh, I so crave that life where we had our own chickens and
Mhm.
we had our own eggs and, all those things. And like really deep rural and really very, I would say, organic in
Yes.
terms of, family, community. Everyone looked out for each other. Like you knew all your neighbors, right? You
Mhm.
went outside and you played from morning till night. And so I think about that as one of the blue zones. People talk about blue zones
Mhm.
these days and how, the air is fresh and the way that people live is just really active and they're really, the food doesn't have to be trucked in or flown in from like a different country, right? And
Right.
so that's the kind of, upbringing that I had. It was also very like it was very community oriented, right? So
Hmm.
everyone looked out for each other. And so I kind of honestly living in the West kind of or even living in the States kind of miss that sometimes,
Yeah.
right? Where you have that life where you're just, you just feel like you are in a community of people who like uplift you and take care of you and take care of each other. So yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm interested to kind of understand the transition because you had these like simple, humble, amazing beginnings.
Yes.
And somehow you ended up in a career in accounting and finance and very money based, which is very much what we're all about here in, especially in the United States.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit more about your business now in a moment, but I know that you've been on a journey, an entrepreneurship journey of starting businesses, facing what some people may call failure,
Yeah.
restarting a business, and having a lot of really important things in your life to drive you to be successful.
I grew up in that kind of community. My grandparents have always been entrepreneurs.
Mm.
So they owned like a little corner, like here we would probably call it like a bodega,
Hmm.
right? So they had like a little corner store, right? And from a little girl, when I used to visit, I used to be there like selling stuff, right? Measuring out food, selling people drinks and meat, all kinds of stuff. So they sold all kinds of stuff and collecting money and counting money and all of that and seeing how, my grandparents were like really savvy business people,
Yeah.
right? Even though it was in this small community, even though we grew, and they did, like my grandfather, I think he did everything, right? He planted crops. He transported people to and from the airport and to and from like different events. My grandmother was at home, and so she was in the grocery store. Sometimes he was there. They even had a bar, right? So, and he, invested in real estate. So there are so many things that he did, even today in his 90s. Told you about the blue zone, right? He's still,
Hmm.
they're both alive in their 80s. My grandma is 86, my grandfather is 94, and still, up and going, right?
Yes.
And so I saw them, it's subconscious, of course, because I'm like, I wasn't thinking about becoming an entrepreneur or anything like that. But I remember when I was about 6 years old and I was visiting my grandparents, and my grandmother said to me, Nikki, because they call me Nikki
Hmm.
at home. She said, Nikki, what do you want to be when you grow up? And of course, as a little kid, everybody wants to be like a lawyer or a doctor or something. So I said to her, I wanted to be a lawyer. And she was like, mm-mm. I don't think you should become a lawyer. I think you should become an accountant. And so I think a seed was planted at that time for it. I'm
Hmm.
not sure if it was, if it's that or if it's just like my left-brained Virgo self that
Yes.
got into numbers and really loving it. And so I kind of feel like that's where it started, where my grandmother was like, no. And the thing about it too is that even though they were entrepreneurs, they worked really hard, right? I'm an
Yeah.
entrepreneur now. My brain works hard, but I don't work physically hard,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
I think for them, they wanted their kids to have careers because, it was more prestigious than,
Hmm.
have running a farm or running a grocery store. And so for us, they really didn't encourage us to do that, to do what they did. They wanted us to like work in an office job kind of thing,
Yeah, yeah, because
right?
that's what we were told is the best way, right? When we were coming up, that's what
Yeah,
you're supposed to do. You're supposed to like go get a degree, get a
yeah,
good job, get benefits, get 401k, and then you'll instantly be happy, which is not
yes,
always the case.
a good and get a good government job, and I did get a good
Yes.
government job, right? And so that was kind of the thinking at the time. And then the city looked really attractive, and everybody wanted to go to the city and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's when the seed was planted. When she was like, "Nope, do not become a lawyer. You can. I think you should become an accountant."
Yeah, which I think is great because I think we need more women, especially women of color,
Yes.
in finance and teaching people how to manage their money and teaching us how to set ourselves up so we don't have to work really hard our whole lives and not have a chance to fully live it.
Right. Exactly.
And you said something else that I resonate with very deeply is as parents, as a mother, like there's so much you want for your kids. We all like want our kids to have more than we have a better life than we have. I know that was, my children were the driver of my entire corporate career because I became a mom very young. And when you have these little people that need you and take care of you and you love so much, sometimes you're doing it more for them than yourself. And I know you as a mother also can relate to that. And, you know, a lot of what it means to live our lives is to take on that identity of mother and do the things that we need to do to give our children better lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like that is, I mean, I'm pretty good at what I do. I love my business, right? But the driving force right now behind my business is my son, Brandon. So, Brandon is on the autism spectrum, and you know, it it can be challenging to get him the best, you know, school, get him into the best schools
Mm-hmm.
and getting the best therapies for him. And we've been fortunate enough to, well, I've been fortunate enough to run my own business where we can afford to send him to a school that really focuses on, you know, taking care of him and his needs and, you know, teaching to his ability, right?
Yeah.
And we had some challenges there, and we were like, but we had the option, right? And you know, I know we haven't come to this part yet, but I feel like my business gives me the freedom to provide for my family in a way that maybe a job wouldn't, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, you I get to the point where I can create my income. It's not like a set salary that I get every 2 weeks. It's kind of, you know, okay, this is what we need to bring into our business. How are we going to do it? And then go to work and work on those goals, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what I love about entrepreneurship. There are a lot of, you know, other sides to entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
It's very tough. You know, it can be very tough. It can be, you know, it's 24/7. It's not like when you leave your job and you're like, oh, let me leave that behind and then deal with that tomorrow. And so there's other sides, but I say to people all the time, there's so many challenges to becoming an entrepreneur, but oh my gosh, the rewards are so amazing,
Yeah.
right? The feeling of, you know, being so satisfied, you know, with what you're doing and, you know, being able to provide some of the things for your family that you would not be able to, right?
Yeah.
And so Brandon is the driving force behind me having to make sure that this business is successful because I want the best life for him.
Mhm.
And that's the only way that I'm going to be able to provide it.
Yeah. And you recently had a big milestone with him recently on your first kind of trip getting on a plane. I remember
Yes.
seeing you post about that. Yeah.
Oh, listen, I definitely projected my fear of flying onto him. After that first experience of him flying, I was like, okay, we have to make sure that we make all the preparations. And of course you should, right? If you
Yeah.
have a child on the spectrum or a child with special needs, you have to make sure that you do all the preparation because you just don't know how they're going to react, right? The plane
Hmm.
is loud. It's can be claustrophobic if your child has, you know, feels like that. And so we, you know, did all the things. It took us a while to take him on a plane. And then when we when we were thinking of taking a family vacation, an international vacation, we did, you know, his therapist did social stories.
Hmm.
Made sure you know, we had his iPad, we got his snacks, we got everything sorted, right? To make sure that he was going to be prepared, you know, for the airport, you know, the airport from the airport all the way to our destination, right?
Hmm.
Let me tell you, he did so amazing. Like we
Oh,
were in the plane, we brought his because he has some sensitivities, some sound sensitivities. So we brought his noise canceling headphones. I don't even think we needed it.
oh,
Was he sat in the plane and we're like, you're going in the plane, and we showed him like tons of videos inside of a plane, outside, the sounds it makes when it's taking off, when it's landing. So when we actually got onto the plane, he was so excited. They're taking off, and I'm looking at him like, oh my gosh, I wonder if he's gonna start, you know, getting, you know, agitated or anything like that. Let me tell you, he's looking through the window. His sister was sitting next to him, my daughter Alexia. She was looking through the window, like telling him, "Oh, Brandon, look at the sea, look at the sky." Like, he's pointing, at the sky. He's looking out the window. We're landing, easy peasy. He's looking out the window, like when the plane lands and it kind of like shakes when it just hits the
Mhm.
ground. Kind of was like, "Oh, what's that?" But then he like goes right back to looking out the window, and it's so funny when we were coming home, same thing, very easy. Takeoff was easy, and when we got home, I looked over. He was fast asleep. That
No.
boy slept through the landing. So I'm like, okay, we're going to be traveling all the time now. So that was a huge milestone for him and for us as a family, because we're like, how you were very worried about, your children. Like, we
Mhm.
all are worried about our kids, right?
Mhm.
And we don't want them to be affected by anything. So we try to kind of
Yeah.
build this wall around them. And then just looking at that, I'm like, we did not have to do that. We could have probably
Yeah.
before and stuff. So that was kind of a lesson for us. But also, we're super happy because now he loves traveling, and we had an amazing vacation. He loves the water, and so he spent all his time at the water park.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's so beautiful. And I feel like that's a metaphor for life, right? Not only for like a lesson for parents and how we want to protect our children, but like how do we absorb other people's fears
yeah,
as they project them onto us that hold us back, right? What are we taking on that are other people's that if we just kind of listened to ourselves and tried and weren't afraid to fail or weren't afraid of something happening unexpected
yeah.
or believing in ourselves that it's going to be okay, we can handle it, we're prepared, we will figure it out. It's like such a beautiful metaphor
I
for
learned
what happens.
I learned so much not that week, even about myself. And I'm like, Nicole, this was all you. And my husband too, because he doesn't like flying. So between both of us, we're like, oh, it's gonna be so hard for him. And we're
Yeah.
looking at each other like, we definitely projected our fears onto him. And so again, I definitely learned a lesson that week. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna, allow him to fly, because we're
Yes.
just kind of like, oh, let's coddle him a little bit. And he's like, no, I'm fine. So
Yeah. Yeah. And so speaking of fear, like starting your own business can be very scary. Like taking the leap out of what a lot of people consider is the safe route. Though I think no matter what you choose in life, there's always risks. Nothing is ever guaranteed. There's what you feel comfortable with and the life that you want to live, because both can be hard. Having a corporate job can be very hard. Starting your own business can be very hard. It's really uncovering how you really want to live your life and the type of life you want to live. And so tell me a little bit about how you got over the fear of kind of starting a business, and then when the first business that you worked on, when you found yourself in a place of having to start over, being brave enough to like not be like, okay, forget this. I tried it. I'm done. Let me go find me a nice, safe corporate job. Like you still chose the life you wanted to live.
let me tell you something about entrepreneurship. Anybody who is a true entrepreneur cannot ignore their calling,
Mm.
right? So I've always, I think since 2009 or so, I've just had this thing about doing something else, like having a side hustle. I was working a corporate job in New York. Things were fine, honestly.
Mhm.
And so I, got bit by the entrepreneurship bug and started out like most people started in network marketing, right?
Mhm.
I was pretty good at it. I, moved up the ranks. Oops, something in my mouth. All right. Yeah, so I moved up the ranks in that company. It was a health and nutrition company. And I loved it because I loved the products and I could see that it was really helping my clients, right?
Mhm.
And so kind of graduated from network marketing to online marketing. Again, something that I really, really loved. I did a lot of advertising on social media, on Facebook. So I've been at this game for quite a while,
Yeah.
right? And so, kind of got into that online business. And, I was in accounting, right? My background was accounting. So marketing and online marketing, it was a little bit new for me,
Mhm.
but I was really successful at it. I built a six-figure business in like a year or a year and a half,
Yeah,
right?
that's great.
But yeah, of course. But the problem was that I was not managing my money, right? Wasn't
Mm-hmm.
paying attention. And then when things got a little bit lean, started to depend on credit cards, started to get into debt, right? And it kind of snowballed. And so that's where, built a successful business, but also got to the point where I had to file bankruptcy because
Yeah.
business kind of, went out of business basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, you know what? Gonna go back to a regular job and forget about this entrepreneurship thing, right? Like
Yeah.
what a few people do this, right?
Yeah.
Again, as I said, it's a lot of risk, right? The risks are high, the rewards are great, but again, the risks are high, and some
Mm-hmm.
people are not willing to take those. And so, kind of went back to a corporate job, and again, like this thing never leaves you. Like
Right.
as soon as you get the idea, and the thing about entrepreneurs is that we get ideas all the time,
All the
even when
ideas.
we're even when we're not looking for ideas, right?
Hmm.
And so I got this idea. I'm like, after I was literally forced to focus on my finances because now we had no credit. We had to literally live off what we earned.
Hmm.
And so had to be tight with the budget, had to keep track, had to make sure that we were not overdrawing our accounts, all of that. And so being disciplined that way helped me to, just look at my situation and I'm like, I wonder how many other people are going through this,
Mm.
right? I wonder how many other people would benefit from like seeing their numbers and knowing exactly what's happening in their households. Because at this,
Right.
I wasn't even thinking about business finances. I was just thinking about household finances. And then the idea came to me to start, helping people with their finances. And I did that for a little bit and got a few clients. And I really, really loved it, especially when people are looking at their numbers and you're like, oh my gosh, first of all, I did not know I still had that subscription. I don't need it. Or
Right.
had two subscriptions. Like there's a lot of discovery and a lot of, the things that go into it really changes lives when you're able to help people with their finances, right?
Yeah.
Just see how they can, um, make better decisions, how they can save more, how they can spend less, how they,
Yeah.
save for specific things, all those things,
The
right?
things they never taught us in school, like the most important things of being an adult that they didn't teach us.
They
Yeah.
didn't teach us at home either,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Even though sometimes we're like, it wasn't taught in school, there's so much that's not taught in school. But I just feel like, there's some things that you should be taught in your home
Yes.
about money but because your parents are, they're paying the bills, they're the one, so they should be. But then again, I grew up in a household where there was never enough money. It's kind
Mm-hmm.
of hard to be like, budget your money, save 10%. So it was, like we were literally set up for failure,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Just because home wasn't, for me, it was not, that place where people spoke about money or spoke positively about money. And
Yeah.
then school, nothing about money. Yes, you do accounting. Yes, you manage people's accounts, but it wasn't like you do this for yourself as well, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that was, you know, kind of bitten by that bug again to start doing this. And then when I started to do the personal thing, I'm like, but what about business people?
Mm-hmm.
Don't do their finances or don't do their bookkeeping and they're scrambling. I used to be one of those people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tax deadline, trying to get your numbers together, downloading a 1 year worth of credit card statements and bank statements, and then you're trying to pull out, oh, because you're commingling now, right? So
Yes.
you're like, oh, my fast food transaction is right next to my website, with the transaction. And so it was a nightmare to do that. And I said, how about if I created something where they don't have to wait until the tax deadline
Mm-hmm.
to like scramble and get these all together? What if I could help them to do this like a simple tool where they can actually do this daily or weekly, right? Because I used to
Yeah.
be on top of my finances daily. And I'm like, how do I help people to develop this habit? Because it really changed my life, literally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where the idea for 5 Minute Bookkeeper was born, where I'm like, I want to help people to be on top of their finances because I know how it could save them from bankruptcy. It could
Hmm.
save them from going into debt. It could save them from so much, right?
Yes.
And so that's where the idea for a 5 Minute Bookkeeper was born. I like it, it would not leave me.
Yeah. And I feel like, well, number one, being an entrepreneur, if I wouldn't have been a chief operating officer in my former role and had to sit and look at P&L and finance sheets and understand it, which that was probably the biggest thing because I grew up in advertising media and marketing and I was running a big accounts for most of my career. But when I had to learn the finance piece and sit with the CFO every day, when I started my business, I was like, oh, how many people don't get that in their career, in their lifetime to even understand like basic finances, especially when you're starting a business. And then how do you, like you said, look at, okay, what's my business doing versus what I'm doing? Because now it's all one thing, right? When you make these choices. And I think it's so important too that we hear so much in entrepreneurship. Sometimes it's the story of find something you're really passionate about and go do it. Well, a lot of people don't know what their passions are. They're multi-passionate, right? Or people are like, this is the new hot thing, do this thing to get rich or jump on the bandwagon. But the advice that I feel has been the best when it comes to someone who wants to start a business is find the need that you can best fill, right? And most of us become experts by lived experience.
Yeah.
And you found a way to take this lived experience that you had yourself and say, okay, now I want to help other people not have this experience. I have this whole tool belt. I have the experience. I've done it myself. And I feel like those are the best fits to build a business that you're going to really be in it for because it's a journey. Like nothing is like, oh, wake up tomorrow, I'm going to build a business, instant success is easy. I have a team. I don't have to, like that's not how it works.
Absolutely not. Like you literally, and the thing about it is that you have to kind of build a business that is right for you, right? There's a lot of advice out there about what you should and should not be doing in your business. But I say that, we all have this inner guidance, right? We all have this gut instinct. And so we are the ones who know exactly how we want our business to go. If
Mm-hmm.
you're enjoying it, even if you're not, at the revenue level that you want to be or at the stage where you want to be, but if you're enjoying the process,
Yes.
right, then you're like, okay, I'm on the right path. And so that's one of the measures that I use in my business. Yes, I want to make money. Yes, I want to expand my team. Yes, I want to do all the things.
Yeah.
But am I enjoying doing this? Do I wake up every single day wanting to do this? Or is this
Yes.
like, oh my gosh, this big challenge, this big burden? Right. And I
Yes.
feel like that's the difference between a job and your own business, right? Monday
Mm-hmm.
morning blues, there is actually statistics that say that a lot of heart attacks happen on Monday mornings,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
People wake up and they're like, oh my gosh, I do not want to do this. I do not want to go to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't wake up passionate about what you're doing, that can be like a huge, factor in your business just not doing
Mm-hmm.
it, right? You don't want to do
Yeah.
it. You don't feel like doing it. It's not making the kind of money that you want. Because let me tell you,
Yeah.
it, a lot of times it's not going to be making the money that you want it to make. But if you
Yeah.
have the drive and the passion for it, then that's what will keep you going.
Yeah. I think having a clear why
Yes.
and finding the meaning in it, whether you're building your own business or you're working for an organization. I think a lot of people feel that way in corporate because they're not aligned. Like what the company's doing is not necessarily aligned with their why.
Yeah.
And if they're not clear on, okay, well, some people are really good at compartmentalizing and saying, okay, this job serves a purpose in my life. I know what my bigger why is. So this is how I want to design my life. And they can do it very well. But a
Yeah.
lot of us are living the prescribed life. We never like took the time to find our why, or we didn't
Yeah.
take the risks to fail and learn and uncover those little nuggets. And so we end up with those Monday blues and the burnout and the misery and kind of feeling like we're wasting the years.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing about it too is that when you say find your why, I feel like a lot of people have to feel like it's this profound thing. It doesn't have to be.
Mm-hmm.
Your why could be, I just want to make a lot of money.
Right,
I want to make a lot of money because I don't want to go to like a day job.
right,
So that could be it. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be, I want to take care of my special needs child, like
right.
me, or somebody wants to, buy their parents a house, or if somebody wants to give to charity or whatever. It doesn't have to be. I feel like a lot of people, when they talk about what's your why, what's your big why, they get stuck.
Yeah.
But it could be something simple as I just don't want to get up and drive 3 hours round trip every single day to a day job that I hate.
Yeah, or like a lot, everyone doesn't want a lot of money. Some people want a simple life. They want a garden in the backyard. They want an easy, simple, low cost life. And they know that. So they don't feel the pressure of having to have all the things and spend all the money and keep up with the Joneses. They know exactly what they want. And I think that that's such an important thing. And so I think when you came upon the 5 Minute Bookkeeper, I know so many people who have praised how easy it's made their lives, because we are in a community with a lot of entrepreneurs, especially women entrepreneurs, and so many people get stuck at the finance part, right? And so not only has this been a tool to help so many people actually continue down the path of owning a business and not feeling like they have to give up, but it's also done a lot for your life, like finding that alignment. Like you've been a lot of places now, like you've been on Good Morning America, The Breakfast Club. You've had this whole big shift and leap in your life once you leaned into the thing that was aligned with your lived experience and how you wanted to help people.
Like a lot of times those things come when again, you're doing your calling, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're in you're in that space where this is what I want to do. This is what I love to do. This is my passion. And so the opportunities just started to come. Good Morning America came because I was in a community where I had grown my income to multiple six figures in like less than 2 years, right? Which is
Yeah.
unheard of. Like,
Yeah.
only like a small percentage of women entrepreneurs ever achieve that.
Right.
So I was on Good Morning America talking about that. I was on the Breakfast Club, again, sharing about 5 Minute Bookkeeper and the journey to building this business and also to helping entrepreneurs to get on top of their finances. And so, in essence, Black Enterprise, Time, a lot of those different media, because I really want to get the word out, Orion, right? I really
Mm-hmm.
want to get the word out to entrepreneurs that it doesn't have to be this difficult, not because you're small, right? People think about, oh, I'm a small business, so I don't have to do these other things. But I would say do the things that the bigger corporations are doing because they will definitely help you. Like I used to work with American Express and we had a whole team doing just finance,
Mm-hmm. Right.
like spreadsheets and numbers and budgeting and budgets and allocations and all of that. And you can do that in your own small business as well, right? So that
Yeah.
because you're preparing yourself to scale, right? You're preparing yourself to grow. And then you don't want to wait until you grow, until you get bigger. And then you have this wobbly foundation that you're trying to fix, right?
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, for sure. I definitely have been working for years on getting word out that it doesn't have to be difficult, doesn't have to be, some people think about their finances and bookkeeping and they're like, they get this like visceral reaction to it. And I'm like, I want you to love doing your bookkeeping. And I've accomplished that with so many clients, so many testimonials. And they're like, it's as easy as you said it was going to be. And I literally enjoy doing this. And I'm not sure if I'm supposed to enjoy bookkeeping, but I am.
Yeah. And it's like, we also like, we get these ideas in our head because like some people love it. I don't personally love like sitting and working in spreadsheets and doing like the admin work. Shout out to everyone who loves that. That's why they're the people who do that all the time. But what I've learned to do is once I understood and had the basic understanding of like, oh, it's way easier if I just sit down and spend 15 minutes a week.
Yeah.
And so I made like a money date with myself, right? Like,
Yes.
and I'm a little woo, so it's like, oh, let me do it on Thursday or Friday because Thursday is ruled by Jupiter, which is abundance and expansion, and Friday is Venus, which is money and love. So it's like, let me just take some time, set the mood, like get us like make it fun. Like we forget that we can choose to make things more enjoyable. We can set ourselves up and find tools and find people like you who can help us, because so many of us try to just like, oh, I got to do it myself. Or if you're starting a business, you're like, I can't afford to hire anybody or do any tools. I'm just going to figure it out. And we don't realize like our time is money. Our time is very valuable.
Yeah.
So
And I feel like hiring somebody else to help you, like, listen, some people are like, Nicole, even if it takes 5 seconds, I don't want to do this bookkeeping part,
Right.
right? And so what we do is we also do the bookkeeping for them, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so again, if that's not your thing, you don't want to do that. My clients are like, I just want to be creative. I just want to do what I love to do. I don't want to do the numbers, which is totally fine. But hire somebody. Don't just leave it. If you don't want to do it, hire somebody to do it. Don't let it pile up for years. And then now you have to go back and,
Yeah.
have it all cleaned up.
Yeah, I call that the pain gap because I think that happens in any size business, right? Whether you're an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, or a major corporation. Like I've worked for several companies and they find themselves in a hyper growth, quick scale time frame, right? And I have this little for those of who are just listening, it's almost like a little chart where on the top it's shooting up. This is like, oh, money, revenue, clients, it's going so great. But how you do work stays the same. And so that gap is like the pain gap because you don't think about, let me set myself up when I do have all the clients coming in and I do have all the money coming in. Like you said, how do we set that solid foundation so it's not painful as you scale and you're less likely to quit or stress out your team or create a bad culture at work? Like there's so many different ways that we can set ourselves up to make the future easier.
Exactly. Exactly. I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs look at the money, they're like, oh, it's so expensive. But sometimes investing in that, person or system or what
Mm-hmm.
at that level is what helps you to scale faster, right?
Yes.
And so you
Yeah.
have to be able to figure out, okay, how is this going to benefit my business? And then make a decision from there. But definitely, if you don't want to do the finances, just hire somebody to do it.
And I think that's like in life too, right? Like I'm the person who took forever it took me a long time to hire a coach. It took me a long time to hire a therapist. It took me a long time to hire a housekeeper. I'm like, well, I can do this. Like, why would I pay somebody when I can just do it? And then you realize like, oh, if I've built myself up into a place where I can hire someone, that gives me more time to live. Like that
Yeah.
gives me time back to do things that I want to enjoy, to experience this life. And that's why I'm constantly talking to people about life design and like thinking about how you want to live your days because like that's where life really happens, right? And so
Yeah.
all these things we're talking about are really tools to design a life that we can show up to design a life that we can actually live so we don't get to the end of our lives and be a part of this end of life regrets epidemic, is which I really feel like it is because so many people have all the common end of life regrets, or they work 40 or 50 years and they save up and they have all this money in the bank, and then the day they retire they have a heart attack or they have something happens and they just don't have the quality of life that they were promised. And they're like, if only I would have took the trip, if only I would have spent the time with my kids, if only I would have, you know, took those days off and spent time with my friends. And so investing in ourselves in this way frees up time to make sure we're doing the things that matter.
Yeah, for sure. Because I'm going to tell you a little story. Like last 2 weeks, we went on vacation for a week, and
Mhm.
my father-in-law passed away. So,
Oh,
she
sorry.
last
Yeah.
week, and so it wasn't like I was working full force, and then my team actually, like we were all on a break. And
Yeah.
I still made money in my business. My system still worked because I invested in systems early on in
Mhm.
order to do some delivery while even if we're not able to, like do this one-on-one delivery. I don't believe in that. I believe we're able to build systems, and even if it's a service-based business where you have to be, delivering your services to the client, but there are ways that you can automate some things so that when you're not available, things are still running, right? Your business is still running. And so that's the other thing too. Think about, okay, if I invest in this thing, how will it free up my time so that I can go on vacation, so I can
Mhm.
take time for family emergencies, so I can like go sit by the pool. And sometimes that's another thing, Corian, is that a lot of us, this guilt about taking a break,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And I have it too, and I have to like sometimes talk to myself. I'm like, I I'm like, you're going on vacation and you're not going to be working half the time. You
Yeah.
know, you're not going to feel guilty about taking a day off,
Yeah.
right? Or taking a long weekend or something like that, because we feel like this is our business. We're working in our business. It's our responsibility to all
Hmm.
be on and always be working. But
Yeah.
that is recipe for burnout, right? And so I say we have to get comfortable with the fact that, it's okay to take a day off, right?
Hmm.
It's okay to clear your calendar. It's okay to spend some time with your family and not be worried or feeling guilty, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought I would add that in.
Yeah. Because you can't get those moments back.
Yeah,
You can't get the time back. And you also, like, we'll get to the point where your body's going to make you take a break. And that's
yeah,
not the kind of break you want to take, right? Because then nothing happens. And so, yes, rest in recharging and taking care of yourself is so important. And I don't know why we ever got to this place in society where we thought we were machines, because like you can't run a marathon every day. Like our body can't do it, but yet we're trying to do that mentally as we're working in these knowledge worker jobs. Like we no longer work in factories in industrial revolution. I mean, there's some people who still do manual labor, but now we're trying to take all those old rules
yeah,
and apply it to our brains, where like 8-hour shifts were because that's how long our bodies could stand and do gadgets on a line. Our
right.
brain can't work for 8 hours straight. Like it just doesn't work that way. You're not getting any quality output if you haven't taken any breaks and rest and recharge.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's so. If for someone who's out there right now and they've had the idea of like, here's the life I want to live. They're trying to build their dream. They're working on their business, and they've hit that point where like they're stuck. Like they're at that almost like, oh, I think I should just give up. This is too hard. I didn't do the things I should to set the foundation. Like, what advice do you have to someone who's right there on that edge and trying to figure out what to do?
Okay, right. I feel like sometimes we're stuck in analysis paralysis,
Hmm.
and we're sitting there like, oh, I would really want to do this. And then what usually happens is wake up one day and somebody else is doing our idea that we had
Yes.
4 years ago, right? And now they're making all this money, and then we become resentful, right? Or they're
Mm,
successful,
hmm.
right? And so I would say just take that first step. 5 Minute Bookkeeper now is not 5 Minute Bookkeeper 4 years ago.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was very like new and wobbly and like, what platform do we put it on? What we've changed the template that we now use. We've rebranded. We've done so many things in the meantime, but it meant that we literally started from scratch,
Mm-hmm.
figured it out along the way. Let me tell you, you will figure this out along the way. If you have clients that you're working with, right?
Hmm.
And they're like, oh my gosh, Corian, I love this service and I love what it has done for my life. It's life changing. And they start telling other people about it. That's your proof of concept, right?
Yes.
And I know you have to do a little market research. You don't want to just jump out there and do something. But if you are talking to people and they're like, oh my gosh, I need this, and they're paying you money for it, right?
Hmm.
If people are paying you for it, at least three people, I say, if at least
Yes.
people have paid you money for this thing, then you know that, okay, this is a viable business
Hmm.
and I can start working on it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to keep working at it and listen to your clients, right?
Yes.
They're saying, this is amazing. And you say to them, what would you change? And they're like, oh, I would add this thing or I would remove. And then the same thing keeps coming up. Then you start looking at that and take feedback. It's
Yeah.
not that difficult. It's not
Yeah.
that difficult. My grandparents woke up every single day and opened their store, and the people came in and they sold their items, and then they closed at a certain time in the evenings. Every single day. They did not reinvent the wheel. They didn't start anything over. And so that's what I do. I do not reinvent the wheel. I've been talking about 5 Minute Bookkeeper for 4 years.
Hmm.
Every single day, saying the same thing over and over again in 100 different ways, right?
Hmm.
Definitely saying the same thing. And so I feel like a lot of people get tired of like, oh my gosh, I talk about this thing every single day. Yes.
Right, because people don't hear you as much as you hear yourself, right? Like we could say it 1,000 times, and people might have heard it 3 out of the 1,000, because we are in a society where we're distracted and our attention's pulled in a million different ways.
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah, you're the only person who's seeing every post, every ad, every email, all of that. And so you're tired of yourself? Great. Keep doing it because you're doing something right.
Yes, just keep going. Just
Yeah.
start and keep going. I love that you brought up the fact of how many of us like, oh, I had that idea. I could be rich right now. Like we see that so much, right? And Elizabeth Gilbert in her book, Big Magic, which is one of my favorite books, she talks about how ideas come to us because they want to be birthed through us.
Yeah.
And if we don't birth them, they will go find someone else who will. And so I think the execution and the action and just trying, and I know so many people who are on an entrepreneurship journey and they'll try something or they'll do one launch and it didn't work and they scrap it. They're like, oh, that doesn't work. Let me try something new. And they're constantly in that cycle of, oh, that doesn't work. Try something new. And they're never like iterating or they're never getting the feedback or they're never trying again because they're so afraid of failure and rejection. But that's where all the good nuggets live.
Yeah. I learned in network marketing that you just collect no's because those no's take you closer to a yes, right? So I don't have
Yes.
any issues with people saying, "Oh, I don't want this product," or "I'm not gonna move forward or work with you." No, no problem. And sometimes those people come back later. Like you cannot hold people responsible. You can't be offended if somebody doesn't want to buy your product or your service,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because they might not you're not for everybody. But the
Right.
people that you're for, you keep talking to those people every single day. And maybe there's other people that come in that you're like, oh, it's not for that person, but they come in anyway, and that's okay. Don't start talking to only them.
Yes.
Keep talking to your people, right? That you're here to serve. And I promise you, you're going to build a successful business if you just keep going.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So I have a few fun questions I like to wrap up with.
Of course.
So the first one is what's currently the favorite part of your day?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So right now I take my son Brandon to camp in the mornings and they swim 3 times a week. He loves swimming anytime in the morning because he doesn't want to go to camp. He just wants to be home and hang out. But anytime I say, "Oh, Brandon, today is swim day," he is so excited, right? He's like, he gets his swim clothes on, he's ready. And so I just get so much joy watching how excited he is about things that he loves.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
so, and I love slow mornings, right? Some people
Mhm.
wake up, and this is another thing too for entrepreneurs. Don't just go to your phone already and start working and start looking
Amen.
at emails and start doing all these things. You
Amen.
know,
Yes.
take your time and wake up. If you have to work until a little bit later, that's okay, right? But I feel like just waking your body up in the morning and just, taking your time, getting ready, if you have kids, getting the kids ready to go out the door. Maybe if you drink coffee, have a cup of
Mm.
coffee, sit outside get some fresh air. That's what I'm like very intentional about my mornings. And so
Yeah.
I really start working at maybe like 11 in the mornings.
Mhm.
And I go until like 3, 4 o'clock, right?
Mhm.
So it's not like, I want my mornings to be sacred. I want to
Yes.
just take my time in the mornings. And that's what I do almost every day.
Oh, that's the perfect word. I teach my clients to set up their sacred brackets, which is the first beginning of your day and end of your day. I'm such an advocate of filling your cup first. It makes that little shift makes such a big difference in your life.
Yeah,
So so
absolutely.
so important.
And then one of my things that I do, and my sister laughs at me all the time, I, because I'm doing this, fresh fruits, fresh food. So at least 3 times a week, I go to Whole Foods in the morning when I drop Brandon. So I just go and I get my fruits. I pick my
Mm,
vegetables, and I'm like, and I love doing that. That brings
yeah,
me joy, right?
the
It's
little
it's
things. Just the
simple,
little
right?
things. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Okay, that's awesome. So the next question is, what's your current cozy?
Oh, my current cozy. So in my living room, I have a Christmas blanket. And anytime I'm watching TV or whatever, I just love that blanket. And it has one side is like white and it's like woolly, but the
Hmm.
other side is like really like soft and smooth.
Yeah.
So I turn it on the wrong side. It's the wrong side, right? And so when I think of cozy, I think of blankets, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
if it's on my bed, there's a blanket in my couch. When like I feel so, it just adds this extra coziness to
Yes.
whatever I'm doing in the living room. So
Cozy blankets and warm drinks, like
yes,
totally my thing. Like love it so much.
yeah.
So do you have a current feel good song?
Um, I don't. I love to listen to Jamaican dance hall music,
Yes.
like loud and very. Sometimes can be like X-rated, R-rated. But I'm trying to think if there's a feel good song. No, I literally love a lot of music, and I would just listen to whatever is on the radio or whatever is on my playlist. I go to dance hall 1990s, and anybody who's Jamaican and was growing up in the 90s, 80s, 90s, they know that
Mm,
dance hall was like the
mm.
best.
I think the 90s was the best everything, right? All the music from the 90s, all the trends. Like I came up in the 90s too, and I'm like watching my kids and I'm like, did that in the 90s. Oh, yes. So what's one thing that you do now for your 80-year-old self?
For my 80-year-old self,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's a good question. Um, I would say exercise,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I have an autoimmune condition, and even though I've always, exercised, I've always been like wishy-washy with it. Oh, sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. And then just learning more about this condition and learning more about the things that help to slow down the progress and the things that help to, make things easier on my joints, etc.
Yeah.
And so I think that unfortunately, that's the quote unquote reason why I focus a lot on the exercising and, eating healthier, stuff like that. But I want to be able to live well beyond my 80s. My
Yeah.
grandparents are in their 80s and 90s, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I am like, okay, if I focus on eating healthy, if I
Mm-hmm.
focus on moving my body and, making sure that my joints, because you literally don't, you can't build muscle after a while, right?
Right.
You lose there's bone loss, there's all kinds of stuff
Mm-hmm.
happening as we age, even though we don't see it or feel it, it's happening, right?
Yes.
And so, I think, right now, those are the things that I do to kind of physically what I do.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
mentally is to live a stress-free life.
Mm.
Does not mean I don't have things that stress me out or are
Right.
supposed to stress me out, but I'm like, okay, what's happening now? And one of my mantras
Mm-hmm.
is now, now, now. I'm not worried about tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
yesterday, what's going to be happening, all of that. And just grounding myself in now. And I feel, again, lowering the stress levels in order to not like burn out and to not, just my mental health, focus a lot on my mental health.
Yeah. Learning to be present is the secret sauce. Like that we just don't realize how many things get better when we just focus on like what's happening right now.
Yeah.
And I think that movement is critical. Like I think desk jobs have destroyed our health because we don't move enough. Like a lot, like your parents when they like the blue zones. A lot of that happens because people actually physically move all day, and then we don't. We just kind of sit and look at the screen.
Like, for
Mhm.
example, we literally, I don't remember sitting in a car and we went to a ton of places. We would walk miles and miles. We go to the store, it's at least a mile. You go
Yeah.
to the doctors, and we walked everywhere.
Hmm.
Now, and even in that same area that I grew up, nobody's walking anymore. Now we
Hmm.
have like tons of cars, and so it's kind of like, not what it used to be. But I look at it and I'm like, everybody was so healthy and lived to such a much older
Yeah.
age just because they were so active.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Final question is how do you remember to live?
How do I remember to live?
Hmm. In the everyday, how do you remember to actually live?
Oh my gosh, I don't know if I ever thought about that.
Mhm.
Um, I just like I say to people all the time, I am the person that you see, right? I think that I'm a good person. I think that I'm a happy person. And I feel like people love being around me, right?
Hmm.
Like my mom lives a few minutes away from here, and when I go, they're happy to see me. We sit,
Yeah.
we chat, we laugh. And so I feel like people, I love people, people love me. And I feel like that is the kind of life I want to live, right? I
Mhm.
want to be a good person, and I want to continue to like bring the light to people's lives, right?
Yes.
I was
Hmm.
talking to my life coach recently on one of our calls, and she's like, "You're you're the light. Like even when it comes to your business, you're shining a light on this thing that people think is so hard, right? And then how can I be the light
Yeah.
in my life and in other people's lives?" So yeah, I think I live a pretty peaceful life, right? Yeah,
Yes.
pretty
Yeah.
happy and peaceful.
Oh, I love that. And you definitely are a light. I love your energy. Every time we are in the same space or in the same environment, it definitely shines through. So
Thank you.
tell everyone how they can find you, how they can connect with you, how they can get the 5 Minute Bookkeeper.
Yeah, so I am on Instagram at 5 Minute Bookkeeper. I'm also on Facebook. Just look for Nicole Barham. The end of my the URL is NA Barham. I'm also on Threads at 5 Minute Bookkeeper. I'm on all the things. And if they want to check out 5 Minute Bookkeeper, they want to see the demo, they can go to 5minutebookkeeper.com, the number 5minutebookkeeper.com.
Awesome. We'll put all of that in the show notes as well.
Thank you.
This has been such a pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Thanks again for coming and being on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Corian.